The transmission arrived on a cold Tuesday morning at the Mars diplomatic station. Ji-won Park was drinking her third cup of coffee when the communication array lit up like a festival of lights. Every screen in the facility flashed with incoming data from beyond known space. The signal was strong, clear, and impossibly complex. Ji-won set down her cup and stared at the main display. She had spent 15 years as Earth's chief ambassador to the outer colonies, mediating disputes between mining companies and settlers. Nothing in her career prepared her for this moment. The message decoded itself automatically, translating into perfect Korean, then English, then every human language simultaneously. Greetings to the species of Sol 3, known as humanity. The Galactic Council welcomes you to join the community of civilized worlds. Within minutes, every communication device on Earth, Mars, and the 30 human colonies received the same message. People stopped in the streets. Children looked up from their screens. The entire human race held its breath together. Ji-won read through the full transmission with trembling hands. The Galactic Council represented 847 different species. They offered humanity membership as a junior partner. The benefits seemed endless. Advanced technology, protection from hostile alien forces, access to trade networks spanning thousands of star systems, medical knowledge that could extend human life by centuries. All of this, freely given to welcome humanity into galactic society. The price seemed reasonable. Humanity would agree to certain regulations, trade agreements, military limitations during the probationary period. Standard procedures, the message explained, for all new species joining the Council. Nothing to worry about. Just formalities to ensure peaceful integration. Across human space, celebrations erupted spontaneously. In Seoul, millions poured into the streets, dancing and singing. In New York, the old stock exchange building projected images of alien worlds onto the night sky. On Mars, colonists opened bottles of whiskey they had been saving for special occasions. This was it. Humanity had reached the stars, and the stars had reached back. Min-ho Kim stood on the bridge of the TCS horizon and watched Earth grow smaller through the viewport. His ship had been chosen to carry humanity's delegation to Nexus Prime, the Council's home station. It was the greatest honor of his life. The Horizon was humanity's finest vessel, a beautiful combination of military power and diplomatic grace. Her hull gleamed white and silver, decorated with the flags of every nation on Earth. The journey would take 3 months, even with humanity's fastest engines. Minho used the time to study everything the Council had sent. Information about galactic law, details about the hundreds of species humanity would soon meet. Images of worlds that made Earth look small and ordinary. His chief science officer, Dae-in Choi, spent her days in the ship's library, reading through the membership documents. Sometimes Minho would find her there late at night, surrounded by holographic displays, her face lit by blue light. "Can't sleep?" he asked one evening. Dae-in looked up, rubbing her tired eyes. "There's so much to learn. Did you know the Council has existed for over 50,000 years? They've brought peace to entire galactic sectors. This is the greatest moment in human history, Captain." Minho smiled. "Get some rest, Dae-in. We'll need you sharp when we arrive." The Horizon arrived at Nexus Prime on schedule. The station was beyond anything humanity had imagined. It was a city in space larger than Earth's moon, spinning slowly against the backdrop of a purple nebula. Thousands of ships moved around it like insects around a hive. Each one represented a different species, a different world, a different story. The welcome ceremony took place in the Stellar Chamber, a vast amphitheater that could hold representatives from all 847 member species. Ji-won walked into that space and felt smaller than she had ever felt in her life. The chamber rose up in circular tiers, each level filled with beings of impossible variety. Some looked almost human, others defied description. There were creatures of light, beings made of living crystal, species that existed in multiple dimensions at once. At the center of the chamber stood a raised platform. Ji-won climbed the steps with the rest of the human delegation. Cameras followed their every move, broadcasting to billions of humans back home. This moment would be remembered forever. A tall, elegant being approached the platform. Its skin shimmered like oil on water, constantly shifting through different colors. It spoke in a voice that seemed to come from everywhere at once. "I am Vothax, representative of the Kelthiri people. On behalf of the Galactic Council, I welcome humanity to the community of stars. You have shown great promise. Your species displays creativity, determination, and courage. We believe you will make valuable junior members of our council. Junior members. G1 noticed the phrase but pushed the thought aside. Of course, humanity would start as junior members. They were the newcomers. They had to prove themselves first. The ceremony continued for hours, speech after speech, praising humanity's achievements and potential. Representatives from dozens of species came forward to shake hands with the human delegation. Some of the aliens were warm and friendly, others seemed cold, almost predatory. But all of them smiled, in whatever way their species smiled. When it finally ended, G1 felt exhausted but happy. They had done it. Humanity had joined the galaxy. That night, back in their assigned quarters on Nexus Prime, Dayan knocked on G1's door. The scientist looked worried, holding a datapad close to her chest. "Ambassador, I need to show you something." G1 invited her in, offering tea. Dayan shook her head and activated her datapad. Legal documents filled the air between them, dense paragraphs of text written in the formal language of galactic law. "I've been reading the membership contract," Dayan said quietly. "The full version, not the summary they showed us. There are clauses buried in here. Restrictions on military development, mandatory technology sharing that only goes one direction, trade agreements that lock us into selling raw materials at fixed prices while buying finished goods at market rates. Ambassador, these terms are not fair. They're designed to keep us dependent." G1 felt something cold settle in her stomach. She had trusted the council. All of humanity had trusted them. "Are you sure? Maybe you're misunderstanding the legal language. I've checked with our legal experts back home. They see it too. But when they tried to raise concerns, council officials told them these are standard provisions for all junior members. They said we shouldn't worry, that once we've proven ourselves, the terms will change." "How long is the probationary period?" Dayan met her eyes. 50 years, 50 years. 2 generations of humans would live under these terms before they could be renegotiated. G1 looked out the window at Nexus Prime's glittering lights. Somewhere in that massive station, 847 species lived and worked together. Had they all started like this? Were these terms really standard? "Keep this quiet for now," G1 said finally. "We've already signed the agreement. We can't back out now without causing a diplomatic incident. But keep studying those documents. Find out everything you can." Dayan nodded and left. G1 sat alone in her quarters, staring at the alien stars outside her window. The celebrations back on Earth were probably still going on. Children were dreaming of visiting alien worlds. Adults were planning new futures in this expanded universe. Nobody knew yet that humanity had just made the biggest mistake in its history. Nobody knew that the Galactic Council's friendly smile hid very sharp teeth. Nobody knew that 847 species had not welcomed humanity as partners. They had welcomed humanity as prey. 6 months passed since humanity joined the Galactic Council. The celebrations had ended. Reality had begun to sink in. Minho Kim stood on the bridge of the horizon, watching Council warships patrol near the human colony on Epsilon Station. They claimed to be providing security. It felt more like surveillance. "Captain, they're scanning us again," his tactical officer reported. "Third time this week." Minho nodded but said nothing. What could he say? The Council ships had every right to be there, according to the treaties humanity had signed. Junior members accepted Council oversight for their own protection. That's what the document said. That's what everyone had agreed to. But something felt wrong. The Council ships never helped with actual problems. When pirates attacked a mining convoy near Beta Colony, the Council warships had been mysteriously absent. The human defense fleet had handled it alone. But when humanity requested permission to build more defensive platforms around their colonies, the Council had denied the request. Too aggressive, they said, not appropriate for junior members. Back on Earth, G1 Park sat in endless meetings with Council trade representatives. The deals got worse every month. Humanity exported rare minerals, technological innovations, and agricultural products. In return, they received basic manufactured goods at prices that kept climbing. The Council representatives smiled and explained that market conditions were complex. Junior members needed time to understand galactic economics. G1 had stopped smiling back. She had spent 6 months watching humanity's wealth flow outward, while almost nothing came back. The advanced technology the Council had promised remained mysteriously unavailable. Always next year. Always after humanity proved itself more. Always with new conditions attached. "We're being robbed," she told Prime Minister Sun Mi-han during a secure communication. Legally, officially, but robbed nonetheless. Sun Mi's face on the screen looked tired. She had aged 10 years and 6 months. "I know, but what can we do? We signed the agreements. The whole galaxy watched us sign them. If we break the treaties now, we look like the problem. We look like the species that can't follow rules. So we just accept this? For now, we gather evidence. We document everything. And we look for a way out that doesn't start a war we cannot win." On Council Station 7, a young communications officer named Tae-hyun Song sat at his monitoring station during the night shift. He had joined the diplomatic corps straight out of university, eager to serve humanity among the stars. 6 months of work had replaced his enthusiasm with doubt. Tae-hyun's job was to process routine communications between council officials and human representatives. Boring work mostly, requests for trade permits, shipping schedules, the mundane bureaucracy that kept civilization running. But tonight something different appeared in his queue. The transmission was encrypted with high-level council security protocols. It should never have been routed to his station. Someone had made a mistake. Tae-hyun knew he should report it immediately and forget he had ever seen it. Instead, he opened the file. The transmission was between 2 council military commanders discussing humanity. Tae-hyun's hand started shaking as he read. The words were cold and clinical. Humanity was progressing exactly as predicted. Resource extraction was ahead of schedule. Military limitation protocols were working perfectly. In another year, maybe 2. Humanity would be economically dependent enough that resistance would become unthinkable. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the historical data attached to the message. Records of other species. 143 other species. All of them had joined the council as junior members. All of them had signed similar agreements. All of them had followed the same path. Exploitation, dependency, absorption. Not one of them had ever graduated to senior membership. Not in 50,000 years of council history. Tae-hyun copied everything to an isolated data chip and erased all traces of his access. His hands wouldn't stop shaking. He had to get this information to someone who could use it, someone who could do something. He requested emergency leave, claiming a family illness. 2 days later, he was on a transport back to Earth. The data chip hidden in a false compartment in his luggage. On Earth, Yoonji Kang ran the Terran Intelligence Division from a secure facility beneath the Korean mountains. She had spent 20 years in intelligence work, first for the Korean government, then for the unified Terran coalition. She had seen every kind of threat humanity could face, but when Tae-hyun Song walked into her office and handed her the data chip, she realized she had seen nothing yet. Yoonji spent 3 days reviewing the data. She brought in her best analysts. They verified the encryption signatures. They traced the transmission sources. They cross-referenced the historical records with humanity's own observations of other council species. Everything checked out. The Galactic Council was a protection racket on a galactic scale. They invited new species to join, promising benefits and security. Then they used treaties and regulations to strip those species of their independence. Any species that resisted found itself facing mysterious pirate attacks or conflicts with neighboring civilizations. Conflicts that council investigations always traced back to unfortunate misunderstandings. Conflicts that ended when the resistant species agreed to accept more council oversight. The council didn't protect species from threats. The council was the threat. Everything else was theater. Yoonji encrypted her findings and sent them directly to Prime Minister Han. Then she requested an emergency meeting of the Coalition Security Council. This was bigger than intelligence operations. This was an existential threat to humanity's survival. The meeting took place in a shielded room deep underground. 30 people attended: Prime Minister Han, Defense Minister Hajun Lee, Ambassador Park recalled from Nexus Prime, Fleet Admiral Jamin Cho, scientists, military strategists, intelligence officials. They watched Yoonji's presentation in silence. When she finished, nobody spoke for a long moment. The weight of the information pressed down on everyone in the room. Humanity had been naive. They had rushed into the council's embrace like children running towards strangers offering candy. General Hajun broke the silence. We need to start preparing for war, now, today, before they realize we know. We can't win a war against the Council, Admiral Cho said quietly. They have thousands of warships, billions of soldiers, technology centuries beyond ours. If we fight, we die. If we don't fight, we die slowly, Hajun shot back. 50 years from now we'll be nothing but slaves. Is that better? We don't have enough information yet, Jiwan said. We need to know more about their military capabilities, their response patterns, how they've crushed resistance in the past. I can get that information, Yunji said, but it will take time. And we have to assume they're watching us. If we make obvious preparations, they'll move against us before we're ready. Prime Minister Han stood up. She looked at each person in the room. Here's what we're going to do. Publicly, we continue playing the role of compliant junior members. We smile, we follow their rules. We don't give them any excuse to act against us. Meanwhile, we prepare. Secretly. Carefully. We recall our fleet for routine maintenance. We accelerate our weapons research programs under the cover of civilian projects. We build hidden supply caches on our colonies, and we gather every piece of information we can about the Council's military capabilities. What if they discover what we're doing? Someone asked. Then we fight with whatever we have, Han said. Because we will not go quietly into servitude. We will not let our children live as slaves. Humanity has faced extinction before. We've survived ice ages, plagues, world wars, and our own foolishness. We've survived because we refuse to give up. That doesn't change now. She looked around the room again. Does anyone disagree? Anyone think we should just accept the Council's terms? Nobody spoke. The decision was made. Humanity would prepare for war. They would do it quietly, carefully, and completely, and when the time came, they would show the Galactic Council something they had apparently forgotten in 50,000 years of unchallenged power. They would show the Council what happens when you trap a species that spent its entire evolutionary history learning how to survive against impossible odds. They would show the Council what humans did when backed into a corner. They would show the Council why humanity's entire history was written in blood, determination, and the absolute refusal to submit to anyone. The meeting ended. The 30 most powerful people in human civilization left the underground bunker and returned to their normal duties. To the watching Council, nothing had changed. Humanity continued to be the eager, compliant junior members they appeared to be. But beneath the surface, in hidden facilities and secret meetings, humanity prepared for the fight of its existence. The clock was ticking. The Council would eventually realize something was wrong. When that moment came, humanity needed to be ready because there would be no second chances, no mercy, no forgiveness for species that defied the Council. There would only be the choice between resistance and slavery. And humanity had already made its choice. The work began immediately. Admiral Jamin Cho recalled every human warship to home ports for what he publicly called routine maintenance and upgrades. Council observers watched the fleet arrive at Earth's orbital shipyards and seemed satisfied. Junior members were supposed to maintain smaller, less threatening military forces. Seeing humanity dock their ships suggested compliance. What the observers didn't see was the work happening inside those ships. In sealed compartments, human engineers stripped out old systems and installed new weapons. Not the kind of weapons the Council treaties explicitly forbade. Humanity had learned to read contracts carefully. The treaties banned certain classes of energy weapons, certain types of missiles, specific autonomous systems. They said nothing about kinetic weapons, nothing about electronic warfare packages built on human neural patterns that alien systems couldn't predict. Nothing about swarm drones that technically required human oversight, but could operate independently for short periods. Nothing about cyber weapons designed specifically to exploit weaknesses in Council computer architecture. Dr. Nari, Kim led the weapons development program from a hidden facility on Mars. She had been Earth's leading physicist before the Council arrived. Now she was humanity's best hope for survival. She worked 18-hour days, running simulations and building prototypes. Her team grew from 50 scientists to 500, all working in absolute secrecy. The Council relies on technological superiority, she explained during a briefing with military commanders. They've had the same basic weapon systems for thousands of years. Why change what works? But that's their weakness. They're predictable. We're not. She activated a holographic display showing a Council warship. Their shields are designed to stop energy weapons and explosive missiles. They're incredibly effective against those threats, but they're not designed to stop a solid slug traveling at 0.95 light speed. Kinetic weapons are primitive by Council standards. They don't expect us to use them. Will it work? Admiral Cho asked. In simulations? Yes, against real Council ships. We won't know until we try. Nari smiled grimly. But I'd rather try something unexpected than use weapons they're prepared for. While the military prepared in secret, humanity's civilian population prepared in plain sight. Sora Bay ran civil defense programs across all 30 human colonies. She organized evacuation drills, built hidden supply depots, trained civilians in emergency procedures. The Council observers saw it all and approved. Junior members should prepare for emergencies. It showed responsibility. They didn't realize the emergencies humanity was preparing for all involved Council attack. On every human world, children learned where the evacuation shelters were. Adults knew which supplies to grab if they had to run. Colonial governors maintained hidden command centers that could operate even if the main government buildings were destroyed. Humanity didn't talk about who they were preparing to fight. They didn't have to. Everyone knew. 10 months after humanity discovered the truth, the Council's patience ran out. G1 received a message marked urgent priority. Supreme Chancellor Drexith himself requested an immediate meeting. The highest authority in the Council wanted to speak with humanity's ambassador. G1 traveled to Nexus Prime knowing this could be the end. Maybe they had discovered humanity's preparations. Maybe the war was starting today. She prepared herself for whatever came next. Drexith met her in his private office, a room larger than most human homes. He was a member of the Valkyran species, tall and powerful. With 4 arms and skin like polished black stone, his eyes were solid gold without pupils. They seemed to see through G1 to some deeper truth. Ambassador Park, he said in a voice like grinding rocks, humanity has been a council member for nearly 1 year. In that time, we have noted several concerning trends. Concerning? G1 kept her voice steady. Your compliance with trade agreements has decreased. Your military has recalled its fleet for maintenance that should not take this long. Your colonial governments have increased civil defense spending beyond reasonable levels. Drexith moved around his desk, looming over G1. These patterns suggest a lack of trust in the Council's protection. We're simply being cautious. Cautious. Drexith made a sound that might have been laughter. We have seen cautious before, Ambassador. 143 times before. Species that become cautious eventually become rebellious. Rebellious species create problems. The Council does not like problems. G1 felt ice run down her spine. He knew they had discovered the truth. Or at least suspected it. What does the Council want? Cooperation. True cooperation, not this performance you've been giving us. Drexith activated a holographic display. Humanity will accept Council military bases on Earth and Mars. You will surrender half your military vessels to joint operations under Council command. You will open all your research facilities to Council inspection, and you will increase resource exports by 40%. And if we refuse, then humanity will face the same problems other rebellious species have faced. Pirate attacks, trade disruptions, perhaps unfortunate conflicts with neighboring civilizations. The galaxy is a dangerous place, Ambassador. Without Council protection, anything could happen. There it was. The threat barely disguised. Submit or be destroyed. G1 looked at the golden eyes of the Supreme Chancellor and understood that he had done this before. Many times before. He was good at it. He expected her to fold, to beg, to accept his terms. Instead, she stood up. I will take your demands to my government. You have 48 hours to respond. G1 left the office, left Nexus Prime, and returned to Earth as fast as her ship could travel. She went straight to Prime Minister Han's office and delivered the Chancellor's ultimatum. Han listened without interruption, her face growing harder with each word. They're forcing our hand, Han said finally. They know we're preparing something. They want to neutralize us before we're ready. Are we ready? G1 asked. No, we need at least 6 more months, maybe a year. Han looked out her window at the blue Earth below, but we don't have that time anymore. Within hours, the Coalition Security Council reconvened. The same 30 people who had met a year ago gathered in the same underground room. But this time the atmosphere was different. This time everyone knew the war was coming. The only question was how humanity would respond. General Hajun presented the military situation. We have 120 warships fully upgraded with new weapon systems. Another 80 ships are partially ready. Our ground forces are trained and equipped. But the Council has thousands of ships. They can overwhelm us through pure numbers. Unless we hit them first, Admiral Cho said. A surprise attack on Nexus Prime itself. Decapitate their leadership. Throw them into chaos before they can organize a response. That's suicide, someone protested. Nexus Prime has 300 warships defending it at any given time. It's only suicide if we fight fair, Cho replied. Humanity has never fought fair. We fight dirty. We fight smart. We fight to win, Nari spoke up from her seat. I can't guarantee our weapons will work as designed against Council shields. Simulations are one thing. Reality is another. But if we're going to fight, surprise is our biggest advantage. Once they see what we can do, they'll adapt. We need to make the first strike count. We need someone to deliver our response to the Chancellor, Han said. Someone who can stand in front of the Council and tell them we refuse. Someone who can buy time for our fleet to move into position. Every eye turned to Min-ho Kim. The captain had been sitting quietly, listening to the discussion. Now he looked up and met the Prime Minister's gaze. I'll do it, he said simply. The Horizon is already at Nexus Prime on diplomatic duties. I can request a meeting with the Council. They'll think I'm bringing your acceptance of their terms. Instead, I'll give them humanity's answer. They'll kill you, Jiwan said. As soon as they realize what's happening, they'll destroy your ship. Minho smiled. Then I'll die knowing humanity died fighting. That's more than most species get. The vote was unanimous. Humanity would not submit, would not negotiate, would not accept the Council's terms. They would send Minho to deliver their response. And while the Council's attention was focused on the Horizon, humanity's fleet would move into position for the largest military operation in human history. The attack on Nexus Prime would either free humanity from the Council's grip or end human civilization entirely. There would be no middle ground, no partial victory. Everything humanity had built across 30 star systems would ride on the next 48 hours. Prime Minister Han stood and addressed the room one final time. In 2 days, Captain Kim will stand before the Galactic Council and speak for all of humanity. He will not beg for mercy. He will not negotiate better terms. He will deliver a single word that defines who we are as a species. That word is older than civilization. It's written in every language we've ever spoken. It's carved into our history in letters of blood and fire. When tyrants demand submission, humans have always given the same answer. That answer hasn't changed in 10,000 years, and it will not change now. She looked at each person in the room. Prepare for war. Prepare to fight for everything we are, and everything we will ever be. The Horizon approached Nexus Prime exactly 48 hours after Chancellor Drexith had delivered his ultimatum. Minho stood on the bridge watching the massive station grow larger in the viewport. Around his ship, Council warships moved into position. 300 vessels, each one larger and more powerful than the Horizon. They weren't trying to hide their strength. This was intimidation. This was the Council showing one more species why resistance was futile. Captain, we're being scanned, his tactical officer reported. Multiple targeting locks. They're not even trying to be subtle about it. Let them look, Minho said calmly. They won't find anything interesting. Not yet. The Horizon carried no obvious weapons beyond standard defensive systems. Its hull looked pristine, diplomatic, peaceful. What the Council scanners couldn't detect were the modifications hidden throughout the ship. The dead man's switch connected to Minho's biometrics. The emergency broadcast system ready to transmit on every frequency simultaneously. The encrypted data packets that would trigger events across the galaxy. Everything rode on the next hour. Everything came down to timing. If humanity's hidden fleet arrived too early, the Council would detect them. Too late and Minho would die for nothing. It had to be perfect. Docking clearance granted, the communications officer announced. We're authorized to proceed to the diplomatic berths. The Horizon glided through the station's energy barriers and settled into its assigned dock. Minho took a moment to look at his bridge crew. They had been with him for 3 years. Good people. The best humanity had to offer. They knew they might not survive the next hour. None of them had hesitated to volunteer. Whatever happens, Minho said quietly, it's been an honor serving with you. Honor is ours, Captain, his first officer replied. The rest of the crew nodded agreement. Minho left the bridge and walked to the airlock. He wore his full dress uniform, black and silver, with the Terran Coalition insignia on his chest. No weapons, no armor. Just one human, walking into a chamber filled with beings that wanted to enslave his species. The stellar chamber was already full when Minho arrived. 847 species packed into the circular tiers. He remembered walking this same path a year ago, when humanity had been naive and hopeful, when they had believed the Council's promises. That younger version of himself seemed like a different person, a different life. Chancellor Drexith sat on the highest tier, looking down at the center platform where Minho stood. The golden eyes tracked every movement. Around him, council representatives whispered to each other. Some looked amused. Others seemed impatient. All of them expected the same outcome. Another species bowing to council authority. Another victory in an unbroken string of victories stretching back 50,000 years. Captain Kim, Drexith's voice boomed through the chamber. You come to deliver humanity's response to our security requirements. We trust your species has seen reason, that you understand the benefits of full cooperation with the Council. Minho said nothing. He walked to the exact center of the platform and stopped. The chamber grew quiet. 847 species waited for the human to speak. Waited for him to accept their dominance. Waited for humanity to bend the knee like everyone else. Well, Drexith prompted, what is your government's answer? Minho looked up at the Chancellor. Looked around at the alien faces watching him. Looked at the species that had trapped and exploited 143 civilizations. He thought about Earth. About the children playing in parks unaware that adults were fighting for their future. About the colonists on 30 worlds preparing to defend their homes. About 10,000 years of human history written in blood and determination and the absolute refusal to surrender. He spoke one word, clear, simple, final. No. The chamber went absolutely silent. Not a sound. Not a movement. 847 species trying to process what they had just heard. Then someone laughed. Then another. Within seconds, the entire chamber was filled with laughter. They laughed at the audacity, the stupidity, the pathetic defiance of one tiny species standing against the entire galaxy. Chancellor Drexith nearly fell from his seat, his forearms clutching his sides. No, that is your response? One word, this is what humanity sends. He laughed harder. You are either the bravest fool in the galaxy or the most stupid. The laughter continued. Waves of mockery washing over Minho. He stood perfectly still, waiting. Let them laugh. Let them enjoy their moment. It wouldn't last long. When the laughter finally started to die down, Minho spoke again. His voice carried clearly through the chamber, amplified by the acoustic design. You asked for our answer. That's it, no deals, no compromises, no negotiations, no surrender, no mercy. He paused, letting each word sink in. You wanted to know what humanity says to your ultimatum. We say no. Then you choose extinction, Drexith said, his voice hardening. The Council will not tolerate rebellion. We have crushed 143 species that refuse to cooperate. You will be 144. You've crushed 143 species that were alone, Minho replied. 143 species that believed your lies until it was too late. 143 species that didn't know what they were facing. He smiled. We know. We've seen your pattern. We've studied your methods, and we've been preparing. Preparing? Drexith stood up. You've been preparing? With what? Your handful of primitive ships? Your outdated weapons? You have 120 vessels. We have thousands. You have 30 colonies. We have control over 1,000 star systems. What possibly could you have prepared that threatens the Council? Minho looked at his chronometer. Perfect timing. Right on schedule. He looked back up at the Chancellor. We prepared by learning from you. You taught us that the galaxy respects power. You taught us that treaties are just words without strength to back them. You taught us that nice species finish as slaves. His voice grew harder. But you forgot something. You forgot that humanity has been fighting wars since before we had written language. You forgot that we spent 10,000 years learning how to kill each other efficiently. You forgot that we crawled to the top of our food chain by being better predators than anything that tried to eat us. Alarm klaxons began wailing throughout the station. The Council representatives looked around in confusion. Defense screens activated on the walls showing space around Nexus Prime. And there, appearing like ghosts materializing from nothing, human ships began dropping out of stealth. Not dozens. not hundreds, thousands. While the Council watched 120 visible human warships, humanity had been building. Hidden shipyards in asteroid fields, disguised construction facilities on remote moons, civilian ships converted to military purposes in deep space. For a year, every resource humanity could spare had gone into one purpose: building the largest fleet they could manage without the Council noticing. Minho watched the screens showing Council representatives' faces as they realized what was happening. Watched understanding replace mockery. Watched fear replace confidence. Watched the mighty Galactic Council realize they had made a mistake. "You see, Chancellor, you were right about one thing," Minho said quietly. "Humanity is new to the galaxy. We don't know your customs. We don't understand your traditions. We don't follow your rules." He smiled, and there was nothing friendly in that smile. "Because we're not here to join your club. We're here to burn it down." "This is an act of war," Drexith snarled. "The Council will destroy every human world. We will hunt your species to extinction." "You can try," Minho said, "but first you have to survive the next 3 hours." He touched a control on his uniform. Throughout the horizon, throughout the human fleet, weapons systems activated. Kinetic cannons designed to punch through Council shields. Electronic warfare packages started jamming Council communications. Cyber weapons began infiltrating station systems. Swarm drones launched in clouds that blotted out stars. And Minho sent one final transmission, broadcast on every frequency, to every species the Council had enslaved. One message, simple and clear: "This is Captain Minho Kim of Earth. The Galactic Council has threatened humanity with extinction for refusing to submit. We choose to fight. Any species that wants freedom, rise up now. While the Council deals with us, free yourselves. Humanity stands with you." Drexith lunged toward the platform, but Council guards were already moving. The chamber erupted into chaos. Species shouting. Council representatives calling for security. Alarms wailing everywhere. And above it all, Minho stood perfectly calm, watching his chronometer count down. The Council warships opened fire on the human fleet. Energy beams and missiles launched. For a moment, it looked like the Council's superior technology would win. Their weapons were more powerful, their shields stronger, their numbers overwhelming. Then the human weapons hit. Kinetic rounds traveling at near light speed slammed through Council shields like they weren't there. Electronic warfare turned Council targeting systems into useless junk. Cyber weapons made half the Council ships fire on each other. And the swarm drones, thousands of them, too small and numerous to target effectively, tore through Council hulls like piranhas through flesh. The battle for Nexus Prime lasted exactly 3 hours and 17 minutes. It was the bloodiest 3 hours in galactic history. The Council had never faced an enemy that fought like humanity. They had spent 50,000 years bullying frightened species into submission. They had forgotten what war actually meant. Humanity remembered. Humanity had never forgotten. The Council's 300 defending warships were built to intimidate, not to fight determined enemies. They relied on shield technology and superior firepower, but their shields couldn't stop solid metal moving at almost light speed. Their firepower meant nothing when their targeting computers were infected with human cyber weapons. Their numerical advantage collapsed when their ships couldn't coordinate attacks because their communications were jammed. Admiral Cho commanded the human fleet from his flagship, the TCS Defiance. He had studied every battle in human history, ancient wars, modern conflicts, every trick, every tactic, every lesson written in blood. Now he used all of it against the Council. Alpha Wing, concentrate fire on their command ship. Beta Wing, deploy additional drone swarms. Gamma Wing, kinetic bombardment on their shield generators. His orders were precise and ruthless. This wasn't about honor or glory. This was about survival. The Council tried to adapt. They pulled ships from nearby systems. They activated Nexus Prime's internal defenses. They called for reinforcements from across the galaxy. But adaptation takes time, and in combat time is measured in seconds. Seconds they didn't have. Dr. Nari watched her weapons perform beyond her best simulations. The kinetic cannons worked perfectly. Each shot punched through Council shields and tore through their hulls. The cyber weapons spread through Council computer networks like viruses, causing chaos everywhere they touched. The drone swarms were unstoppable, too numerous and too small for Council point defense systems. "It's working," she whispered, watching the data streams. "It's actually working." On Earth, billions of humans watched the battle on their screens. They watched their fleet fight impossible odds. They watched ships die, each explosion representing hundreds of human lives lost, but they also watched the Council bleed. Watched the mighty empire that had enslaved 143 species learn that humanity would not be 144. Sora Bay stood in a bunker on Mars, ready to evacuate colonists if the battle went wrong. Around her, thousands of civilians waited in silence. Children held their parents' hands. Old people sat quietly remembering wars from their youth. Everyone understood what was happening above their heads. If the fleet lost, there would be no second chances. The Council would show no mercy to a species that dared to fight back, but the fleet wasn't losing. Against all expectations, against every reasonable prediction, humanity was winning. In the stellar chamber, chaos had given way to horror. Council representatives watched their invincible military shatter against human determination. Species that had served the Council for thousands of years saw their masters bleed for the first time. The psychological impact was devastating. Drexith stood frozen watching the screens. This wasn't possible. This couldn't be happening. The Council had won every war for 50,000 years. They were unstoppable. They were supreme. They were being destroyed by a species that had been in space for less than a century. How? He whispered. How are you doing this? Minho still stood on the platform, surrounded by Council guards who seemed unsure if they should arrest him or protect him. He looked up at the Chancellor and saw fear in those golden eyes. Real fear. You want to know our secret? Minho asked. It's simple. You've been at peace for 50,000 years. You forgot what evolution is. You forgot what survival means. You forgot that predators stay sharp. He gestured at the screen showing burning Council ships. We never forgot. We never stopped being predators. We just found new prey. Outside the station, the last Council warship defending Nexus Prime exploded. The human fleet held position surrounding the station. Thousands of weapons aimed at millions of alien lives. One word from Admiral Cho and the station would be torn apart. But Cho didn't give that word. Humanity had come to fight tyranny, not to become tyrants themselves. They had come to free the enslaved, not to create new slaves. Chancellor Drexith, Cho's voice broadcast throughout the station. The Galactic Council's military forces in this system have been neutralized. Your reinforcements are still hours away. You have no defenses, no protection, no options, he paused. Surrender now and we'll accept it. Keep fighting and we'll tear this station apart. The chamber went silent. Every species representative looked at Drexith. The Chancellor's forearms trembled. His golden eyes swept across the faces watching him. For 50,000 years the Council had been supreme. For 50,000 years species had bent to their will. That era had just ended. I surrender, Drexith said quietly. Then louder, the Galactic Council surrenders to humanity. The words echoed through the chamber, through the station, through communications across the galaxy. The Galactic Council, the empire that had ruled unchallenged for 50 millennia, had just surrendered to a species that had been in space for less than a century. But humanity's work wasn't finished. Even as Council forces on Nexus Prime laid down their weapons, Minho's earlier message was spreading across the galaxy. The 143 enslaved species heard it, heard that humanity had fought, had won, had broken the chains, and they rose up. On 1,000 worlds, species that had lived under Council control for generations suddenly rebelled. Some fought. Some simply stopped obeying. Some seized Council facilities and drove out their occupiers. The empire that had seemed eternal crumbled in days. Council fleets tried to respond, but they were scattered across the galaxy. And every time they moved to crush one rebellion, another started. The system that had worked for 50,000 years collapsed. Without overwhelming force to back their threats, the Council had nothing. Without fear to enforce their will, they were powerless. 6 months later, G1 stood in a rebuilt chamber on Nexus Prime. The stellar chamber had been damaged in the battle, but humans and former Council species had worked together to repair it. Now it looked different. The circular tiers remained, but the symbols of Council authority were gone. New banners hung on the walls. Banners representing free species, working together by choice instead of coercion. The Galactic Council was dead. In its place, the Free Species Coalition had formed. 144 species, all equal. All independent. All choosing cooperation instead of having it forced upon them. G1 addressed the assembly. Representatives from across the galaxy listened. We could have taken control, she said. After we won, humanity could have built an empire. We had the military power, the momentum, the opportunity. She looked around the chamber. But that's not why we fought. We fought because every thinking being deserves freedom. We fought because tyranny is wrong, no matter who practices it. We fought so no species would ever have to make the choice we made. Former council species spoke next. Some thanked humanity. Some shared their stories of liberation. Some pledged cooperation in building a better galaxy. Not all species joined the coalition. Some remained independent. Some stayed neutral. But none of them lived in fear anymore. None of them bent to the council's will, because there was no council anymore. Just free species trying to figure out how to live together as equals. Back on Earth, children played in parks again. Adults returned to normal lives. The fleet came home to parades and celebrations. The heroes who had fought at Nexus Prime were honored. The ones who didn't come home were remembered. Prime Minister Han stood at the memorial wall in the coalition headquarters. Names covered the black stone. Human names. Names of people who died fighting for humanity's freedom. She placed her hand on the cold surface and felt the weight of their sacrifice. Was it worth it? Someone asked behind her. She turned to see General Hajun. He looked older than he had a year ago. They all did. War ages people in ways that nothing else can. They died free, Han said quietly. They died fighting instead of living as slaves. Yes, it was worth it. Hajun nodded. The galaxy is going to be chaotic for a while. Without the Council keeping order, there will be conflicts, wars, problems we can't even imagine yet. Freedom is messy, Han agreed. It always has been. But it's better than the alternative. On the memorial wall beneath all the names was carved a single word. The word that started everything. The word that ended 50,000 years of tyranny. The word that freed a galaxy. In every human language. In the languages of all freed species. In alphabets and symbols from 1,000 worlds. All saying the same thing. No. Minho stood on the bridge of the horizon looking out at Earth. His ship had survived the battle. Not all ships had. He thought about the crews that didn't make it home. Thought about the families waiting for people who would never return. War had costs. Freedom had prices. But humanity had paid those prices before. Throughout their history, humans had fought and died for freedom. They had resisted empires, overthrown tyrants, refused to submit. That was humanity's true strength. Not technology, not weapons. The simple, absolute refusal to live on their knees.